everyone, welcome back to another fun-filled lesson of Jennifer Actual Speaking. Welcome back, I am Jennifer Clyde. Now, for those of you that tuned in, of course, for lesson 45, you know exactly what we will be talking about today. Today's topic is politics, and I've added a bit about the government system of Korea as well. So I guess in every country, of course, politics is a very sensitive topic. Sometimes people try to avoid talking about politics, right? But just to make sure that you know the basic expressions, phrases, and vocab that you can use just in case the topic comes up, I have prepared today's lesson. Now, of course, politics is a sensitive topic, as I did mention, whether it's with people in general, but also with family members and even friends. And you might even find yourself in a very awkward situation where you start talking about your political ideas or viewpoints, and the conversation may get overheated. So I'll also let you know some tips on how you can avoid those awkward situations, how you can get out of those awkward situations. Okay, so get ready for it. Today, let's focus on politics and the government system. Okay, let's get started. Welcome back, everyone. Are you ready to begin with our warm-up segment? Let's brainstorm the cues with, of course, the 5 W and H, how questions. Let's begin with who. Of course, to give you a brief idea of my political viewpoint, I guess I'm somewhere in between, I guess somewhere in the middle. You can also say, well, I'm conservative, I'm a bit of this and that, but then again, you can say I'm really indifferent, meaning I'm not interested in politics. But, okay, let's brainstorm with these questions. First of all, the first W question is, of course, who? So, are you conservative, liberal, or moderate? So what is moderate? I guess you can define it as just in the middle, center, right? And also we can say conservative or liberal. Often even in English you can say lefty, left wing, or left party, and right party or right wing. Very similarly in Korean we say 우파, 좌파, and also 중도. So basically you can brainstorm about what you can say in terms of, yourself. Okay, how you view politics. Okay, moving on to another what question is, what is your political stance or what is your political viewpoint? These words basically mean the same thing. It is what you think about something, your perspective on something, your view, meaning viewpoint or stance. Okay, so how do you view, or what is your viewpoint? Right, or political viewpoint. Another one, what would you like to change in the Korean government system or society? Of course, switching over to the government system or simply society, if you could do something, if you could make a few changes, what would you like to change in the Korean government system? Okay, so quickly think about that as well. Also, what would you seriously, this is what you really, really want to do. What would you seriously like to change about politics? So this time, it is focused on politics. So focus on the government system. What do you want to change about it? Are there any changes you want to make? And also think about politics. Is there anything that you would change if you could? Okay, moving on to our when category. When did you start to gain interest in politics? Now, you often have interest in something, right? So, since when were you interested in politics? You may say, I'm not interested. That's fine. But if you are interested in politics, maybe you can talk about when you started to gain interest, become interested in politics. Another one, when did you first vote, okay, in the presidential election? We're switching over to the government system once again. So we're talking about when you voted for the first time for the president of Korea, okay. Also, where? Where did you stand so-and-so years ago? So perhaps we talked about your viewpoint, political stance, your political viewpoint, and if you mentioned, oh, I'm a conservative, well, I'm somewhere in the middle. I'm center, I'm middle of the road. You can talk about where you stand right now and also where you stood years ago, okay? Another one, why? Why are you interested in politics? What are your reasons? Why are you so interested? And you can also talk about why you aren't interested. So why aren't you interested in the political world? So why are you interested? And why are you indifferent? Meaning, why are you not interested? Okay, moving on to our last category, how question. How do you identify yourself, once again, in politics? We're talking about, that's right, in politics. So, identify yourself? Identify yourself. Basically means how do you see yourself? Where do you stand? How do you see yourself in politics? Another how question is, how did your background or experience influence you in terms of your political viewpoint? So perhaps you may have experienced something in the past, or let's say background. A lot of your friends, your family members, your parents, they could have influenced you in terms of your political viewpoint, what you think politics-wise. So you can talk about that. And of course, let's move on to our very final how question. It is, how would you change the Korean political system? Okay, so it's what would you change, and this time, how would you do about doing that? So focus on how you would change the Korean political system, and also earlier we talked about what kinds of changes you wanted to make, if you wanted to make any. Okay, so these were just brief, very quick brainstorming cues for all of you to think about. Let's now move on and begin today's lesson. Here is today's actual talk.
There's a lot of politics in the news these days.
Yeah.
So tell me, do you lean a little left? Do you lean a little right? Or are you more middle of the road?
I would say I'm more middle of the road. I don't
Okay.
really like to affiliate myself with a certain party or certain side.
Okay.
Yeah. What about you?
Well, I'm from Minnesota. And
Right.
in Minnesota, they're very socially and fiscally conservative, but always vote liberal.
Oh, that's so interesting.
It's kind of an odd state, yeah.
Okay.
So,
Has that influenced you then in your...
of course,
Political
growing up
makeup?
in this situation, I guess I lean a little bit to the left when voting. I've liked the Democrats.
Yeah. Okay. No, I think that's fine. I don't really like to identify myself with a political party or a side, and I don't really agree that a country should be dominated by two political parties.
Right. I
Yeah.
like the idea of an independent party, but
Right.
nobody ever votes independent.
Exactly. And you know, some people might agree with some political platforms of the Republican side and also with the Democratic side. So why do you really have to choose between one or the other?
Well, you would hope they would choose based on ideas.
Right.
But, with the limited number of candidates,
Right.
we're always kind of stuck between the lesser of two evils, maybe.
Exactly. That's true. But yeah, politics is playing a huge role these days all around the world. A lot of these countries, like in the Muslim world, are trying to democratize. We saw the Arab Spring that arose in a lot of these countries are going from more conservative political backgrounds to a more liberal and democratic political makeup. But it's not really working out to what the people want, it seems.
Yeah, I think it's tough. Politics has been important, obviously, throughout history.
Right.
But it just continues along this line of, they're conservative thinkers, they're left wing, and rightists,
Right-wing,
and
yeah, exactly. And you have these extremists who are just bleeding liberals, or bleeding Republicans, third generation Republicans. So it's really such a sensitive topic.
Yeah, I think we should stay away from it.
Sounds good.
Now, as you can tell, Rachel and Peter had no choice but to talk about politics, but we could sense that they didn't really want to talk about it, especially towards the end of the conversation. They were so relieved to end the conversation. Anyhow, it sounds as though Rachel was somewhere in the middle, right? And Peter, he did mention something about Democrats. So let's take a look at what they said line by line. I did try to summarize it a bit to help you a bit more easily understand the conversation. Here we go. Now, Peter begins by saying there's much of something, politics in the news these days. Now, take a look at this. There is a lot of something in the news these days. So what does that mean? Basically means there is a lot of talk about politics on the news these days. Everybody is talking about politics. Where? Especially on the news. But in this case, you can say in the news. In the news. There's a lot of something in the news these days, meaning they are covering that topic on the news. And he says, do you lean a little left or do you lean a little right? Or are you more middle of the road? Okay, so lean, in Korean that's 기울다. So if you say lean, you are leaning towards a certain side, leaning towards something. So basically he's asking, are you or do you lean left or right, or are you center? Are you more middle of the road? I did mention earlier, so you can say left party, left wing, right wing. So we're talking about 우파, 좌파, or even right there in the center, okay? So she says, I would say I'm more middle of the road. We're not talking about the actual road, but we're talking about being center of something. And she says, I don't really like to affiliate myself with a certain party. Okay, now party in this case means 당 in Korean. There are many or several political parties, but the point is, she says, I don't like to, I don't want to, I prefer not to affiliate myself with just one party. So affiliate here means to kind of support, okay, take sides with. So affiliate. And she asks, what about you? So let's check out what Peter said. He said, in Minnesota, they're very socially and physically conservative, but always vote liberal. Okay, so what is this? He's talking about people in general. In Minnesota, they are, meaning people in Minnesota are very socially related to society, right? And fiscally conservative. Fiscally, now fiscal has to do with money, monetary, financial. So he's saying socially and financially conservative. Conservative, as we all know, we're talking about being very cautious and careful about something, right? But then again, these people always vote liberal, okay? So liberal, I guess you wouldn't really say it's this or that, but it's kind of a mixture of this and that, okay? This or that, but it's a mixture of many things. So she asks, has that influenced you? What is that here? She's talking about these people. They're very social and fiscally conservative. People in Minnesota, where he comes from. So she says, have those people or that mindset, that viewpoint influenced you? Okay? And he says, of course, yes. Growing up in that situation meaning hearing about that, seeing that, experiencing it himself, I guess I lean a little bit, where? To the left when voting. I like the Democrats. Democratic Party, and you can say, yes, Democrats. In English, Republican Party, you can call them Republicans. Democratic Party, Democrats, okay? So he says he leans a bit to the left when he votes. Now, Rachel says, I don't really like to identify myself with a political party or side, and I don't really agree that a country should be dominated by two political parties. So simply put, okay, let's summarize this. She says, I don't like to identify myself. In other words, affiliate myself with a political party or side. This is exactly what she mentioned earlier. She said, I don't like to, or I don't want to. I prefer not to affiliate myself with a certain party. She's saying the exact same thing. Political party, political side. And she says, I don't think it's right. I disagree. I don't agree that a country should be dominated, should have the power, right? Powered by two political parties. And of course, Peter says, right, I like the idea of an independent party. So we're talking about different parties, and he says, I like the idea of an independent party. It's not this or that, but rather a party that you can actually connect to, I guess, in a way. Okay, so not A or B, but somewhere in between, he says. Now, exactly, and some people might agree with some political platforms of the Republican side and also with the Democratic side. So she's saying, I think this is true for a lot of people. When you actually asked questions about this and this and this, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, they actually do a survey, and then you can figure out whether you are a Republican, a Democratic, right? Also, are you a libertarian, somewhere in the middle or not? But she says, anyhow, some people might agree with A and also B, okay? The Republican side and the Democratic side. So, if they agree with both sides, why do you really have to choose between one and the other, okay? So, once again, to clarify this, she's saying some people think A is right, and some people also think that B is right. So, when one person thinks that A is right and B is right, why do you have to choose between A and B? Why not say both are good, okay? Moving on. Well, he says, well, you would hope they would choose, or you would hope they chose based on ideas. So here, you're saying that ideas are very important, but with a limited number of candidates, 후보 in Korean, right? People or candidates run for presidency or run for office. We're always kind of stuck between what? The lesser of two evils. Now, that is an idiomatic expression. Now, take a look at this. The lesser of two evils. So, picture this in your mind. You have two evils. There are two very evil, bad people. And you have to choose between them. You're stuck between the two very bad people. What do? Would you choose the more evil person or the less evil person? Probably the less. So that's exactly what he's saying. The lesser of the two evils, meaning people tend to choose the person that is less evil. They're both bad, but less evil would be their choice. Now, Rachel says exactly, but politics is playing a huge role. When you say something plays a big role or a huge role, it means it is very important. It plays a very important role. Now, these days, all around the world, not only in Korea, not only in the US, but all around the globe. And she gives an example. A lot of these countries, meaning countries around the world, are trying to democratize. Now, we did take a look at democracy. So to democratize, it means, right, to make something, to make it closer to democracy. Make democracy, democratize. We saw the Arab Spring that arose in a lot of these countries. Arab Spring, we're talking about the demonstrations, right? Now, they are going from A to B. Now, keep that pattern in mind. They are going from more conservative to a more liberal and democratic political makeup. Now, here makeup is not makeup that women put on their face or I put on my face. We're talking about structure, okay? So in other words, many people are going from conservative political backgrounds to, meaning they're switching to more liberal and democratic political makeup, more of a political or democratic political structure. But it's not really working out to what or how the people want, it seems. It's true, especially when it comes to politics. It's not up to you, it's up to them, and that is why your choice is very important. Now, Peter says, yeah, I think it's tough, meaning it's very difficult. Politics has been important throughout history, but it just continues along this line of, now, there are conservative thinkers, there are A, right? And there are left-wingers, there are B, and rightists, there are C. So he's saying there are different groups of people, people that think differently. Now, Rachel agrees by saying exactly. And then she says, and you have these extremists who are just bleeding heart liberals. Now, what is an extremist? We're talking about people, okay? A person can be an extremist. People can be extremists. So basically, if you go to extremes, what do? You like drastic changes, big changes. So there are these kinds of people who are just bleeding heart liberals. Now, bleeding heart often only goes with liberals. You wouldn't say bleeding heart Republicans, but if you did listen to the conversation, Rachel did mention bleeding heart or bleeding liberals or bleeding Republicans. But keep in mind, bleeding heart is often and only used with liberals. So there are these people, extremists, that like drastic changes, that are bleeding heart liberals or Republicans, third generation Republicans. So it's really such a sensitive topic. Now here she goes. They talk plenty about politics and she says, you know, come to think of it, I feel it now. It's a very sensitive topic. And of course, they do come to an end of the conversation. So I would like for you all to take a listen to the actual talk conversation between Rachel and Peter. They were focusing more on U.S. politics, okay? So after this, we'll have a chance to talk about our government system, the government system of Korea, and perhaps a little bit about the political standpoint, political parties in Korea as well. So here, take a listen one more time with the subtitles.
There's a lot of politics in the news these days.
Yeah.
So tell me, do you lean a little left? Do you lean a little right? Or are you more middle of the road?
I would say I'm more middle of the road. I don't
Okay.
really like to affiliate myself with a certain party or certain side.
Okay.
Yeah. What about you?
Well, I'm from Minnesota. And in Minnesota, they're very socially and fiscally conservative, but always vote liberal.
Oh, that's so interesting.
It's kind of an odd state, yeah.
Okay.
So,
Has that influenced you then in your...
of course,
Political
growing up
makeup?
in that situation, I guess I lean a little bit to the left when voting. I've liked the Democrats.
Yeah. Okay. No, I think that's fine. I don't really like to identify myself with a political party or a side, and I don't really agree that a country should be dominated by two political parties.
Right. I
Yeah.
like the idea of an independent party, but
Right.
nobody ever votes independent.
Exactly. And you know, some people might agree with some political platforms of the Republican side and also with the Democratic side. So why do you really have to choose between one or the other?
Well, you would hope they would choose based on ideas.
Right.
But, with the limited number of candidates,
Right.
we're always kind of stuck between the lesser of two evils, maybe.
Exactly, that's true. But yeah, politics is playing a huge role these days all around the world. A lot of these countries, like in the Muslim world, are trying to democratize. We saw the Arab Spring that arose in a lot of these countries are going from more conservative political backgrounds to a more liberal and democratic political makeup. But it's not really working out to what the people want, it seems.
Yeah, I think it's tough. Politics has been important, obviously, throughout history.
Right.
But it just continues along this line of, they're conservative thinkers, they're left wing, and rightists,
Right
and
wing, yeah, exactly. And you have these extremists who are just bleeding liberals, or bleeding Republicans, third generation Republicans. So it's really such a sensitive topic.
Yeah, I think we should stay away from it.
Sounds good.
Welcome back, everyone. Now, to be honest with you, I did have a bit of a difficulty preparing today's lesson because our dialogue was based on the U.S. political system, I guess, and we're trying to focus on the Korean government system and the Korean political parties. So don't worry too much, even if you did not understand the actual talk conversation completely, okay? Now, relax, everyone, and let's focus on today's actual talk expressions. Let's begin talking about the Korean government system. Talk about the president, perhaps. Who's under the president, okay? So you can say that Korea is governed by a directly elected president, okay? Let's take a look at this here. A directly elected, Okay? What does that mean? Directly elected basically means a person or people elects someone or votes for someone directly. It's like 1-to-1, okay? And a unicameral legislature, okay? Uni means what? It means one, right? So we're talking about a single legislative system, okay? Single legislative chamber, for example. So this is exactly what you can say about Korea, okay? One more time. Korea is governed by a directly elected president and a unicameral legislature. Okay. Another one, you can say Korea follows a presidential system, meaning we have a president that governs the country. Or Korea follows a multi-party system. Now, multi here means various, not single, not one, but several. So Korea follows a presidential system, or Korea follows a multi-party system. Okay, let's move on. Now, also about the Korean government system, the head of state is the president. Head of state basically is the person that is at the highest position in governing the country. So that would be, of course, the Korean president. The head of state is the president. Moving on to the presidential term years and elections. Now, term years. Term is a period of time that something is done. It's like a set time for something, okay? And also elections is something we can also talk about. So let's talk about the Korean presidential term years and elections. The president is elected by direct vote. Remember? The president is directly elected, right? Direct vote is also called popular vote. Popular vote or direct vote. It means that a person is able to vote for one specific person or group, okay? For a single 5-year term. Now, I did mention a term is a time period, a set time for something. So basically, a president is elected, right? Now, for a single term, meaning just to run for president once, okay? Just to be president once, not many times. So it's single term, but how long is that term? It's 5 years long. So the president is elected by direct vote for a single 5-year term. He can be president for 5 years just once, okay? Another one, we have presidential elections every 5 years. This is another simple way of saying the above sentence, okay? As I did mention, a single 5-year term means he or she can serve as president just once for 5 years, right? So you can say, we have presidential elections every 5 years, every 5 years. In Korea, a president only gets a single term in office. This is another way of saying that. So gets a single term in office. Now, in the US, it's a bit different. In the US, a president gets a 4-year term. So, if you got the idea, what does this mean? In the US, a president gets a 4-year term. It means for how long can she or he be president? Exactly, for 4 years. And can be re-elected for a second term. Okay, simply put, re-elected means to be elected again, right? For a second term. It's very different. So a single 5-year term is for Korean presidents, right? They can only be president once for 5 years, but in the US, presidents get a 4-year term, right? And they can be re-elected for a second term. So they can run for president twice, and they can serve as president for 4 years each. In total, 8 years. Okay, I hope I'm not confusing you too much. Here we go. The prime minister is appointed by the president. Of course, with the approval of the National Assembly. As you may all know, that's 국회 in Korean, okay? And then moving on. Now, the members of the National Assembly are elected in the general election. So we're talking about choosing who the president is going to be. That would be the presidential election. And of course, National Assembly members are elected in the general election. Okay, let's check out a few more. The members of the National Assembly are directly elected to 4-year terms. Now do you get the idea? Okay, once again, they are directly elected. So a person can vote for one person, or a group can be elected directly, and they can, that's right, run for, or they get a 4-year term. Okay, so basically 4-year term, 5-year term, a single term, right? So keep those terms in mind, and also keep in mind how many times, if they can be re-elected or not, and for how many years they can be president, they can serve as president or a member of the National Assembly. That was a lot of information, of course, everyone, but we are short on time, so please do check out our homepage. We will have the script ready for you with many, many more expressions and phrases related to, of course, today's actual talk expressions on the governmental system and also the political parties of Korea. Okay, that is it, everyone. Let's move on to our next segment. Okay, everyone, it is time for us to take a breather, so take a break with today's idiom. Today's idiom is a political football. You may be telling yourself, oh, no more politics, please, but it is a very interesting idiom, so try to guess what it means in this sentence. Okay, once again, today's idiom is a political football. I really don't have the time or energy for a political football. I don't have the time or energy. I don't want to do this. Basically, you're saying I don't have time to waste for a political football. Now, the definition is in Korean, 정치적 논쟁거리. Okay? In English, it would be a political or a topic or issue that is continually debated, talked about, debated, but it remains to be unsolved, okay? So something about politics or any kind of issue that people continue to talk about for many, many years, for many months, but yeah, they just have a difficult time coming up with a solution to solve the problem. Okay, here is another sentence. Over several months, the debate has become a political football. All they've been doing is pointing fingers at each other. So there's a debate going on for many, 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 many months. But what's happened? Nothing to, of course, I guess, come up with a solution, nothing to solve the problem, but everyone's just pointing fingers. It's your fault, it's your fault, it's your fault. So keep in mind what a political football is, and hopefully you'll have a chance to use it in the future. All right, let's move on to our next segment.
Talk about your political stance. Which way do you lean? Are you conservative, liberal, or moderate? Discuss how your background or experience led you to embrace your current political viewpoint.
I'm a conservative person, and I think we should not to raise taxes for the people. Instead, we need to give tax incentives for the rich people. When I read a book which is entitled Rich Father and Poor Father, it made me a conservative person. Because when we look at the people who make a success, they always put their all of efforts and time into their future and what they are doing at the present. So we should not take too much money from them. And if we look at the Euro crisis, which is occurred last year, the main cause of Euro crisis was too much taxation for the people. So I think reducing taxation is more beneficial for us.
And welcome back, everyone. Did you listen carefully to today's actual interview? Thanks to Lee Yong-woo-nim for the wonderful interview and giving us a chance to, listen to what you had to say about your viewpoint on in politics. So let's check out what he said. Now, he began by saying, I'm a conservative person. Now, if you put it in this form by saying, I am a conservative person, it can actually mean several things. Let's say 2 different things depending on the situation. If you say I'm a conservative person, it could mean 굉장히 보수적인 사람이다. Or if you're talking about politics, you can say I'm a conservative person or I'm a conservative or I'm conservative. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Moving on to second good point, it is they put all of their effort and time into, put something into their future and what they are doing at the present. Okay, so of course he did talk about his political viewpoint, and also he did mention about what he would do, the changes he wanted to make, right? So these are some good points that he mentioned. And moving on to a few oopsies. Now, if we look at the euro crisis, he was talking about a problem and perhaps if he could make changes, what he would do. If we look at the euro crisis, the main cause of the euro crisis was too much taxation for the people. We do understand what he was trying to say, but as always, I want to remind you, don't try to use difficult words and don't try to make your sentence long because that's not always necessary. That's not always good. Make it simple and try to use easier words, okay? So perhaps you can say, if we look at the euro crisis, okay, the main cause of it, remember, it was repetitive. Said it twice, you could just mention it once. The cause of it was heavy taxation on people or heavy taxing. Above we see too much taxation for the people, right? But in place of that, you can say just heavy taxation. Too much taxation, try to say heavy taxation on people. Or simply heavy taxing is another way of putting that, okay? Another one. So I think reducing, okay, lessening or reducing taxation is more beneficial. It's better for us. It's more helpful for us. Let's take a look at which changes or what changes you can make. You can say, so I think reducing taxes, okay? The idea is to reduce taxes, right? Reducing taxes is more beneficial to us. Beneficial for us is used as well, but if you want to end it here, it's beneficial to us, to, but if you want to say for, you can say it's beneficial for us to save money, for people to do something. So there is a slight difference, okay? In this case, it's helpful to us. It's better for us. You would say it is beneficial to us and not for us. Okay, everyone, keep these mistakes in mind, and I hope you don't make the same mistakes in the future. All right, that's a wrap. Now, it does concern me, it kind of does bother me to think that maybe this lesson was a little bit too difficult for you, especially because today's actual talk was based on the political system of the U.S. So try not to focus too much on the actual talk. You can check out the script, though. What you can do is come to our homepage, everyone, and check out the script with much more information on the government system of Korea and also a bit about politics. So please do that, okay? In the meantime, you can come to our homepage, but a quick reminder of what we'll be talking about next time. Perhaps another sensitive topic, but we'll be talking about religion. Hold your worries, it's not going to be as difficult as today's. Now, if you're interested in coming by to say hello, you can come to our homepage at www.ebse.co.kr, find your way over and just search for Tennipo Actual Speaking. Okay, everyone, that is all the time we have for you today. Thanks for joining me. I'll see you again next time. Bye for now.